Welcome to Chasing a Murderer, guys, and today we are going to talk about a case that many of you are familiar with, the Bryan Kohberger case. We have a few updates, and I think they're quite interesting, and this is attached to the 4 students in Idaho who were brutally murdered. Many people believe that Bryan Kohberger is actually a crime fanatic. He was a guy that was very interested in the mysteries of crime. What drives murders? What makes a killer a killer? I think he was more fascinated with the behavior of serial killers than anything else. There's no doubt that Bryan Kohberger, his case, he's an alleged killer in this case, really fantasized over the people that he would study. So these killers, these serial killers he was interested in, he was very, very interested in the mind part. So right now there's been a lot of motions, a lot of delays in this case, which is upsetting to the victims' families. Rightfully so, because they're talking about they believe the trial could start in 2025, so 3 years after the murders. There's been motion after motion, and the defense wants to change venues. Prosecutors say, no way. But defense believes in order to have a fair trial for Kohberger, they need to move out of the Latah County where the slayings took place. The defense is pushing that they can have trial in Ada County, which is the same place that the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell trials were held. Have you guys heard about the insane amount of evidence that the prosecutors have? They said they had 15,000 video clips from businesses, there were 79 businesses that they got these clips from. Then they had 8,000 video clips from 10 residents. They also were able to collect information off of 11 computer devices and 17 cell phones. This does not include the social media accounts and other accounts that they are investigating. They had 15,000 stamped pages of discovery, over 13,000 stamped photographs, and prosecutors said that they did over 280 interviews. The defense is complaining about how that discovery is being handled and how it's being handed over. In fact, she said it's like they are living in a snow globe. But my God, we just went over just a small amount of discovery and evidence that prosecutors are handing over to the Bryan Kohberger's defense. There's so much information that no matter how they hand it over, they're not going to be able to hand it over all at once. And it's going to be like living in a snow globe. It's just tons and tons of information. We've heard that the defense has got several witnesses to make points of how it would be impossible for Bryan Kohberger to be the accused killer. The defense says that Kohberger's chances of a fair trial is utterly corrupted. They believe that all this corruption will be a problem unless they make some huge changes and do it immediately. Kohberger's defense is actually pushing a defense, and his defense is the fact that Kohberger says that he's an avid hiker and that on the night of these slayings that he was in Idaho hiking at a park. Now, guys, mind you, this is like 12 to 4 a.m. in the morning. Who do you know that goes hiking at those times of the day? Now, right now, the defense team is actually planning on using a cell phone specialist to support this alibi. His attorneys say that they plan to use the analysis of the cell tower data to show that Kohberger was not near the crime scene at the time of the murders. No, they claim that last August, Kohberger's lawyers claimed in a court filing that the suspected murderer was instead driving alone, as he often did, when the murders were committed. So this is going to be the big thing that defense is wanting to push, is that he was always out driving at night by himself with no malice intentions whatsoever. But we know there has been at least 12 instances where prosecutors say they were able to prove that Kohberger was sitting outside of the house of the 4 students that were murdered in Idaho. New filings from his defense are saying that Kohberger was driving the opposite direction of King Road, and he was going to hike, run, and or see the moon and stars. Interestingly, they say that on Kohberger's phone, he had actually taken photos of several different late evenings and early mornings, including in November, depicting the night sky. What's interesting is the times that they say that Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were killed around 4 to 4:20 a.m. on November 13th of 2022 in their off-campus home. Prosecutors say that they can pinpoint where Bryan Kohberger's car was around that moment, and that they believe that his car was leaving their residence around that time on November 13th of 2022. So right now, the defense is working on using experts that can say, look, cell phone records can basically estimate where a person is. However, it's very difficult to pinpoint someone's exact location, especially in rural or remote areas. In an article written by Kana Whitworth, she wrote that Ben Leviton, which is an engineer and telecom expert, said, I can tell you with scientific certainty from his cell phone records if he was connected to Moscow cell tower or the Pullman cell tower. However, I can't pinpoint him. But for Bryan Kohberger, there's a lot of things happening with his phone that night that just really raises red flags. For instance, authorities say within a 2-hour period between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., Bryan Kohberger's phone stopped reporting to the network entirely, which is consistent with the phone being out of service or in airplane mode. Of course, prosecutors allege that most likely Bryan Kohberger turned his phone off so that he couldn't be located. And the phone wasn't turned back on until around 4:48 a.m., which was 2 hours after the suspected murders. When the phone does actually come back online, he actually registers the towers that say that he's south of Moscow. Kohberger hasn't had much of a clean or squeaky clean background. When he was 19 years old, he was dealing with rehab and drug addiction. He had the police called on him by his father for stealing his sister's phone. Not only did he steal his sister's phone, but he paid a friend $20 to pick him up and take him to a local mall where he then sold his sister's phone for $200. But what was interesting is when his father, Michael, confronted Kohberger about, this stolen phone, Kohberger chillingly warns him not to do anything stupid. His father ends up calling the police. He gets arrested. But, this is later expunged. Kohberger seems to have, at least it appears, the support of his parents and family in general. But at the same time, there's talk that the family has been quite concerned with Bryan Kohberger's well-being and has even suspected the worst of him. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Bryan Kohberger being a stalker, at least one of these victims, but since has been proven false. And this is most likely the reason that this trial is taking so long to get going. Judge John Judge in Latah County acknowledged that the challenge he faced is trying to find a path forward now that the false information had already been relayed to possible jurors through Edelman's survey. Because there's so much inaccurate and false information out there, the judge is really in a conundrum. This seems to be the normal way of doing things these days, since high profile cases have all the ways of getting spotlight that has never been available to them before. You have several people that are doing these crime coverages and not occasionally making a mistake, but running with what they read without any proof. Especially, when you have new story come out with new information, a lot of times you are capable of making a mistake. But this is not that. These are people that are just doing whatever they can to get the views they need. And it could come to the cost of justice for the victims. So now that we've been told for so many years now that Kohberger was the one stalking these students in Idaho, that he had his eyes set on a few of them. The prosecuting attorney, Bill Thompson, says that Bryan did not stalk the victim. The truth really is this. We really won't know the exact evidence against Kohberger until trial comes along. I believe prosecutors have some compelling evidence that's going to really stand out and answer some of those questions that many of us have had since the beginning. While 2025 seems far away, it's best not to rush prosecutors, because this is a very hard and very serious case to prosecute, and they want to make sure that they do their job well. They have 4 victims in this case that depend on prosecutors. Everything right now. So what are some of the rumors that you guys heard about Bryan Kohberger? And do you believe they are rumors? Maybe they're true. Share it below. Don't forget to subscribe, like. That would be very helpful and very appreciated. Don't forget about these girls here that continue to go missing. People like Dulce, Jasmine Robinson. Their families still have not found these loved ones. Thank you so much, guys, for everything and your support. It's been a crazy year this year. I've been dealing with a senior dog, and she's been sick nearly every week, and it's sad. It's so heartbreaking. Very tough to see your best friend go through so much. So I love you guys. Thanks for being patient.